My daughter-in-law laughed as she slid the plate away from her. Nobody eats food like this anymore, Erica, Lauren said with a smirk. Honestly, the only thing you're good at is feeding people. A few people chuckled nervously. My son Ryan stared down at his plate and said nothing. That silence hurt more than Lauren's words ever could. For years, I had cooked every holiday meal, every birthday dinner, every Sunday gathering. I had poured love into every dish that came out of my kitchen, and for years Lauren had mocked it. But that night, something inside me finally broke. I smiled, picked up the serving bowl, and quietly walked back into the kitchen. I made a decision right then. Lauren would never eat another meal I cooked. What she didn't know was that losing my cooking would be the smallest thing she was about to lose. Before we continue, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever done everything you could for someone only to have them treat your kindness like it meant nothing? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is in your part of the world. I read every comment, and I truly enjoy hearing from you. If you enjoy heartfelt family stories like this one, please like and subscribe so you won't miss what happens next. My name is Erica Knight, and for most of my life I believed that food was one of the purest ways to tell people you love them. I learned that from my husband Michael. 40 years ago, when we were newly married and barely making enough money to pay our rent, Michael and I opened a small family restaurant in our town outside Columbus, Ohio. It wasn't fancy. The tables didn't match. The sign out front had been painted by Michael himself. During winter, the old windows rattled whenever the wind blew. But people came. They came for the homemade chicken pot pie, the slow-cooked beef stew, the peach cobbler, and the warm rolls that filled the dining room with the smell of butter every morning. More importantly, they came because they felt welcome. Michael used to say, "People may forget what they ate, but they'll never forget how you made them feel." For 30 years, we worked side by side. Some days were hard. Some years were harder. But we built something together. We built a place where families celebrated birthdays, anniversaries, graduations, and sometimes even survived heartbreak. When Michael died 8 years ago, a part of me died with him. Cancer took him much faster than either of us expected. One month, he was standing beside me in the kitchen teasing me because I always added too much cinnamon to the apple pie. The next month, I was sitting beside a hospital bed holding his hand while he took his last breath. After the funeral, I couldn't bring myself to keep the restaurant open. Every corner reminded me of him. Every recipe carried a memory. So I sold the building and quietly stepped away from the life we had built. At the time, I thought I was retiring. Looking back, I think I was hiding. The only thing that kept me moving forward was my family. My son Ryan, my granddaughter Emma, my grandson Benjamin, and later, Ryan's wife Lauren. Ryan had always been a gentle boy. Even as a child, he hated conflict. If two kids argued on the playground, Ryan would try to make peace. If someone was upset, he would apologize even when he hadn't done anything wrong. When he met Lauren, I thought she would help him become more confident. At first, I liked her. She was energetic, ambitious, and smart. She worked in marketing and always seemed to know what was fashionable, what was trending, and what everyone else was doing. She spoke quickly, she dressed beautifully, and she seemed genuinely interested in becoming part of our family. Or at least, that's what I believed. The first warning sign was so small, I almost ignored it. A few months after their wedding, I invited them over for Sunday dinner. I made roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, and homemade biscuits. It was the same meal Ryan had requested every birthday since he was 12. Lauren took one bite and smiled. Then she laughed softly. "Wow," she said. "People really ate like this every week back then." I thought she was joking, so I laughed too, but she kept going. "It just feels so heavy. Doesn't anyone worry about carbs around here?" Ryan chuckled awkwardly. I smiled and changed the subject. It didn't seem important. But comments like that became more frequent. Every family dinner brought a new criticism. Too much butter. Too much salt. Too old-fashioned. Too plain. Too unhealthy. Too boring. No matter what I cooked, Lauren found something wrong with it. The strange thing was that she never stopped eating it. She always cleaned her plate. She always packed leftovers to take home. Yet somehow, she still managed to make me feel embarrassed for serving it. At first, I told myself she didn't mean any harm. Different generations have different tastes. Different people express themselves differently. I tried to be understanding. But over the years, the comments became sharper, less playful, more personal. One Thanksgiving, after I spent 2 full days preparing dinner, Lauren looked around the table and said, "I swear every meal here feels like a museum exhibit." Several people looked uncomfortable. I laughed weakly. Inside, my heart sank. Another time, she posted a picture of my casserole on social media. One of Emma's friends showed it to me by accident. The caption read, "Proof that some recipes should stay in the last century." Hundreds of people reacted. Many laughed. Some left jokes. I stared at the screen for several minutes. Then I quietly handed the phone back. I didn't tell Ryan. I didn't tell anyone. What was the point? Ryan would only say she didn't mean it. That became his answer for everything. "She doesn't mean it, Mom." That's just Lauren. Don't take it personally. But after a while, it becomes impossible not to take it personally. Especially when the criticism isn't aimed at your food. It's aimed at you. Because food was never just food to me. Those recipes carried memories. They carried Michael. They carried decades of love sacrifice and family traditions. Every insult felt like someone was laughing at pieces of my life. The hardest part wasn't Lauren, it was Ryan. I could have handled Lauren on my own. What hurt was watching my son sit silently while it happened. Again, and again, and again. Each time I waited for him to say something. Anything. "That's enough, Lauren. Don't talk to my mother that way. She worked hard on this meal." But the words never came. Instead, he would look down at his plate, or change the subject, or pretend not to notice. The older I got, the more invisible I seemed to become. People thanked me for the meals. They enjoyed the food. They relied on me whenever there was a birthday, holiday, graduation, or family gathering. Yet somehow, my efforts had become expected instead of appreciated. I was no longer Erica. I was simply the person who cooked, the person who cleaned, the person who showed up. And somewhere along the way, Lauren stopped seeing me as a human being and started seeing me as a service. A convenient one. A free one. I didn't realize how far things had gone until the night everything finally changed. The night Lauren laughed at me in front of everyone and said the only thing I was good at was feeding people. The night Ryan said nothing. The night I quietly walked back into my kitchen and made a decision that would change all of our lives. At the time, I thought I was simply refusing to cook. I had no idea I was about to uncover truths that had been hidden inside my family for years. After that night, I couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened over the years. It's funny how the human mind works. When you're in the middle of something painful, you often convince yourself it's not that bad. You excuse it. You explain it away. You tell yourself you're being too sensitive. But once a crack appears, once you finally allow yourself to see the truth, all the memories come rushing back. And that's exactly what happened to me. The morning after Lauren's latest insult, I sat alone at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee growing cold in my hands. For the first time in years, I wasn't planning the next family meal. I wasn't looking through recipes. I wasn't making grocery lists. I was just sitting there, thinking, remembering. One memory after another began replaying in my head. I remembered the Christmas dinner 3 years earlier. I had spent almost an entire week preparing. My grandchildren were coming. Ryan and Lauren were hosting several friends. I wanted everything to be perfect. I made a honey-glazed ham-roasted vegetables, homemade stuffing sweet potato casserole, cranberry bread, and 3 different pies. When everyone arrived, the house smelled wonderful. The children ran through the living room laughing. Christmas music played softly in the background. For a few minutes, everything felt magical. Then Lauren walked into the kitchen. She looked at the table, looked at the food, and sighed dramatically. "Oh, wow." I smiled. "What do you think?" She shrugged. "It looks fine." Then she added the part I still remembered years later. "It just feels kind of outdated." Outdated. As if family traditions had expiration dates. As if love could become unfashionable. I remember forcing a smile while my stomach tightened. No one said anything. Not Ryan. Not the guests. Not me. The moment passed, but the feeling stayed. Another memory surfaced. This one involved my granddaughter Emma. She had been 9 years old at the time. I was teaching her how to make apple pie. She loved baking. She especially loved hearing stories about her grandfather while we cooked. Michael used to tell everyone that the secret ingredient in my pies wasn't cinnamon or sugar. It was stubbornness. Emma thought that was hilarious. That afternoon, flour covered the counters. Apple peels were everywhere. We were laughing together when Lauren walked into the kitchen. She looked at the mess and rolled her eyes. "Mom, are you seriously teaching her these old recipes?" Emma's smile disappeared immediately. I still remember the confusion on her face. Lauren continued, "There are healthier versions online." Emma quietly looked at the pie, then at me, then back at her mother. The excitement vanished from her eyes. I changed the subject to protect her. But later that evening, Emma asked me something that broke my heart. "Grandma, are your recipes bad?" I had smiled and hugged her. "No, sweetheart." But the fact that she even asked stayed with me. Children notice everything. They notice disrespect long before adults realize it. Then, there was the social media incident. That one hurt differently. Because it wasn't private, it wasn't a careless comment at dinner. It was deliberate. Lauren had taken a picture of my tuna casserole during a family gathering. A simple casserole I'd been making since Ryan was a teenager. The next day, one of my church friends called me. She sounded hesitant. "Erica, have you seen Lauren's post?" I hadn't. When she showed me, my face burned. The photo was there for everyone to see. Underneath it, Lauren had written, "When your mother-in-law still thinks it's 1987. Hundreds of reactions. Laughing emojis, jokes, comments. One person wrote, "Looks like prison food." Another said, "My grandmother cooks like that too." People who had never met me were mocking me. Mocking something I had lovingly prepared for my family. I remember sitting alone in my living room afterward, staring at the screen, trying to understand why someone would do that, trying to understand why my son would allow it. Eventually, I called Ryan. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply asked him if he had seen the post. There was a long pause. Then he sighed. "Mom, Lauren didn't mean anything by it." The same answer. Always the same answer. I wanted to ask him why her intentions mattered more than my feelings, but I didn't. Back then, I still believed keeping peace was more important than speaking the truth. I know better now. The following weekend, Ryan called. His voice sounded cheerful, like nothing had happened. "Hey, Mom." "Hi. What are you making Sunday?" I nearly laughed, not because it was funny, because it was unbelievable. The conversation wasn't about how I felt. It wasn't about the argument. It wasn't about Lauren's behavior. It was about the next meal. As if I were a restaurant accepting reservations. As if my hurt didn't exist. I answered carefully. I haven't decided. Ryan hesitated. Lauren was hoping you'd make the chicken pot pie. Of course she was. The same chicken pot pie she claimed was too old-fashioned. The same chicken pot pie she criticized every chance she got. I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not sadness, clarity. For years, I had focused on Lauren's words. But now, I was beginning to see something deeper. Lauren wasn't the only problem. The entire family had slowly become accustomed to receiving without appreciating. Nobody asked whether I was tired. Nobody wondered how many hours I spent shopping, cooking, cleaning, and preparing. Nobody considered that maybe I wanted to spend my weekends doing something other than serving everyone else. I had created part of this situation myself because I never complained, never refused, never set boundaries. I gave and gave and gave until everyone assumed I always would. That realization was painful, but it was also strangely freeing, because if I helped create the pattern, maybe I could finally change it. A few days later, I received another reminder of how little Lauren respected me. Emma called after school. She sounded upset. "Grandma, what's wrong, sweetheart?" There was silence. Then she spoke quietly. "Mom said your food isn't healthy, and that's why I shouldn't eat so much when I come over." For a moment, I couldn't speak. Not because of the criticism, because Lauren was now passing her disrespect down to the children. Emma loved our cooking days together. She loved family traditions, and now she was being taught to look down on them. To look down on me. That hurt more than any joke Lauren had ever made. After we hung up, I sat alone in my kitchen again. The room felt different now. Not because anything had changed, because I had changed. For years, I had viewed myself through Lauren's eyes. An aging widow. An old-fashioned cook. A woman whose best years were behind her. But sitting there that afternoon, another thought entered my mind. What if Lauren was wrong? What if everything she mocked actually had value? What if all those recipes carried something important? What if I had spent years letting the wrong person define my worth? I didn't know it then, but that question was about to change everything. Because only 3 days later, someone from my past would walk back into my life. Someone who remembered exactly who Erica Knight used to be. And his arrival would set into motion events that neither Lauren nor Ryan could have imagined. 3 days later, I was standing in the produce section of a grocery store when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Erica Knight." I turned around. For a moment, I didn't recognize him. His hair was mostly gray now. He wore glasses he hadn't needed years ago. There were more lines around his eyes, but the smile was exactly the same. "Samuel?" I asked. He laughed. "The one and only." I hadn't seen Samuel Whitmore in nearly a decade. Back when Michael was alive, Samuel had been one of our regular customers at Knight's Kitchen. He wasn't wealthy yet, at least not the way he was now. He owned a small construction company back then and came into the restaurant almost every Friday evening. Michael used to joke that Samuel spent more money on our pot roast than he spent on advertising. The three of us had shared countless conversations over the years. When Michael became sick, Samuel visited often. After Michael died and I sold the restaurant, life pulled us in different directions. Yet standing there in the grocery store felt strangely familiar. We talked for nearly 20 minutes, about the town, about Michael, about getting older. Then Samuel asked a question that caught me off guard. "Do you still cook?" I smiled sadly. "Every week." His eyes lit up. "Good," I laughed. Good. You have no idea how many people still talk about your food. I assumed he was being polite. People say things like that when they know you've lost something important. But Samuel looked serious. I'm not exaggerating. I shook my head. That was a long time ago. No, Erica, it wasn't. Something in his tone made me pause. Before I could respond, he continued. Do you know how many people still ask me about Night's kitchen? I smiled politely. Samuel leaned against his shopping cart. I'm serious. Last month, I had lunch with 3 business partners. Somehow, the conversation turned to local restaurants people missed. He pointed at me. Your restaurant came up before any other place. I didn't know what to say. For years, all I had heard was criticism. Too old-fashioned, too heavy, too outdated. Hearing someone speak about my cooking with genuine admiration felt unfamiliar, almost uncomfortable. Samuel seemed to notice. What? I hesitated. It's just been a long time since anyone talked about my food like that. His expression changed. Not dramatically. Just enough for me to notice. Has someone been talking about it differently? I immediately thought of Lauren. I almost told him everything. The insults, the jokes, the social media posts, the years of humiliation. But I stopped myself. I didn't want to sound bitter. So I simply smiled and said, Family has different tastes these days. Samuel studied me for a moment. Then he nodded. But I had a feeling he wasn't fooled. Before leaving, he handed me a business card. I'd like to take you to lunch sometime. I laughed. You need cooking lessons? No. His smile widened. I need to talk to you about something. What? You'll find out. I looked at the card. That sounds suspicious. It should. Then he winked and walked away. For the rest of the day, I couldn't stop thinking about the conversation, not because of whatever mysterious idea Samuel had, because of how it felt. For the first time in years, someone had reminded me of who I used to be. Not Ryan's mother, not Lauren's mother-in-law, not the woman who cooked holiday dinners, Erica Knight, the woman who had built something, the woman whose work once mattered. That evening, Ryan called. The moment I heard his voice, I knew something was coming. Hey, Mom. Hi. Lauren and I wanted to ask you something. Of course. I waited. There was a brief pause. Then Ryan said exactly what I expected. Lauren is planning a dinner party next month. I closed my eyes. Here we go. It'll be pretty important. For who? Some friends. A few coworkers. Neighbors. I remained silent. Ryan continued. Lauren was hoping you could help with the food. Help. Interesting choice of words. We both knew what he really meant. Lauren wanted me to do all the cooking. Again. What kind of help? I asked. Ryan hesitated. Well, there it was. The hesitation of someone trying to make an unreasonable request sound reasonable. She was hoping you could prepare most of the menu. Most. I nearly laughed. How many people? Maybe 35? 35. I slowly set down my coffee cup. 35? It could be closer to 40. Of course it could. And Lauren wants me to cook for 40 people. Mom? No, Ryan, I'm asking. He sighed. Yes. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then Ryan added something that made my stomach turn. Lauren really wants everything to look professional. Professional? The word felt loaded. What does that mean? Another pause. A longer one this time. Finally, Ryan answered. She doesn't want people to know family prepared the food. I felt my chest tighten. So she wants me to cook? Yes. but she doesn't want anyone to know I cooked. Mom, it's not like that. It sounds exactly like that. Ryan immediately became defensive. Lauren just wants a certain image. A certain image. The phrase echoed in my head. A certain image. Apparently, I wasn't part of it. I thought about every Sunday dinner, every holiday meal, every birthday cake, every tray of cookies I had brought to school events for Emma and Benjamin. I thought about the countless hours I had spent feeding people who rarely said thank you. Then, I thought about Samuel, about what he had said earlier that day. People still talk about your food. The contrast was impossible to ignore. One person treated my work as something worth remembering. Another wanted to hide it. Mom! Ryan's voice pulled me back. I took a slow breath. When is the dinner? 3 weeks. I'll think about it. Ryan sounded relieved. Great, but I wasn't finished. Ryan. Yeah. If my food embarrasses Lauren so much, why does she keep asking me to cook? The silence that followed lasted nearly 10 seconds. Long enough to give me my answer. When Ryan finally spoke, his voice was quiet. I don't know. But I did. For years, Lauren had mocked my cooking. Yet whenever she needed something important, she came right back to it. Because deep down, she knew exactly how good it was. She just didn't respect the person making it. That realization settled heavily in my chest. After we hung up, I sat alone in my kitchen. The room was quiet. The evening sunlight streamed through the windows. For the first time, I allowed myself to consider a possibility that would have terrified me a month earlier. What if I said no? Not because I was angry, not because I wanted revenge, because maybe my time, my effort, and my dignity were worth something. Maybe the woman who spent decades feeding everyone else deserved respect too. And maybe, just maybe, I was finally getting tired of giving everything to people who only valued what I could do for them. What I didn't know was that Lauren's upcoming dinner party was about to expose far more than her arrogance. It was about to reveal just how much she had underestimated me. 2 days after Ryan's phone call, Lauren showed up at my front door. She hadn't called ahead. She hadn't texted. She simply appeared on my porch at 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning, wearing expensive sunglasses and carrying a designer handbag that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. The moment I opened the door, she smiled. Not a warm smile. Not a family smile. A business smile. The kind people use when they want something. Hi, Erica? Lauren. She stepped inside before I invited her. That alone irritated me. For years, I would have ignored it. Now I noticed everything. Your house smells amazing, she said. I almost laughed. Of course it did. I had been baking cinnamon bread, the same kind she once called old-fashioned. What brings you here? I asked. Lauren sat at my kitchen table as if she owned it. I wanted to talk about the dinner party. There it was. Straight to business. No small talk. No apology. No acknowledgement of what had happened during our last family dinner. Just the dinner party. I poured myself a cup of coffee but didn't offer her one. A small change. A tiny boundary. Yet it felt surprisingly satisfying. Lauren pulled several sheets of paper from her purse. I've been working on ideas. Ideas? Interesting word. What she actually had was a list of instructions. She spread the papers across the table. I glanced down. The list was detailed. Very detailed. Appetizers, main courses, desserts, serving schedules, presentation notes, decor suggestions. By the time I reached the second page, I realized something. Lauren wasn't asking for help. She was planning to use me as a free catering company. For 40 people. Maybe more. I slowly set the papers down. This is a lot. I know. She smiled brightly. But nobody cooks like you. The compliment felt strange coming from her, almost suspicious. For years she had criticized everything I made. Now suddenly nobody cooked like me. I decided to test something. I thought my food was outdated. For a split second, her smile faltered. Then she recovered. Oh, come on! I'm serious. It was just joking around. Joking around. The phrase immediately irritated me. People often call something a joke when they don't want to take responsibility for it. I looked directly at her. The social media posts were jokes too. Lauren shifted in her chair. The room became quiet. For the first time in years, I wasn't pretending those things never happened. I think you're taking this too personally. There it was. Not an apology, not regret. Just another way to blame me for feeling hurt. I nodded slowly. I see. Lauren quickly changed the subject. Anyway, the dinner is important. Important how? Some of Ryan's co-workers will be there. I listened. Several executives, too. Interesting. Ryan's company is expanding. She leaned forward. This could really help his career. That caught my attention. I loved my son. No matter how disappointed I felt in him lately, I still loved him. Lauren must have seen the change in my expression because she immediately pressed forward. I knew you'd understand. She pushed the menu toward me. Honestly, I don't know what we'd do without you. Without you. Not because she appreciated me, because I was useful. The difference mattered. I studied the pages again. Then I noticed something. At the bottom of one page was a section labeled Staff Instructions. Staff. My eyebrows rose. Underneath it was a note. Kitchen personnel should remain in preparation areas during guest hours. I looked up. What is this? Lauren glanced down. Oh. She laughed awkwardly. That's nothing. No, what is it? She sighed dramatically. Erica, don't make this weird. My stomach tightened. Answer the question. Lauren folded her arms. It just means the kitchen team should stay behind the scenes. Kitchen team. Not family. Not Erica. Kitchen team. I stared at her. Am I the kitchen team? She looked uncomfortable. For the first time since arriving, she didn't have a quick answer. Finally, she said, It's just easier. Easier for who? For the event. I almost couldn't believe what I was hearing. She wanted me to prepare food for dozens of guests, spend days shopping, cooking, baking, cleaning, then hide in the kitchen while she accepted compliments. The realization should have shocked me. Instead, it simply confirmed everything I had already begun to understand. Lauren didn't respect me. She respected what I could provide. Nothing more. A few years ago, I might have agreed anyway. For Ryan, for the grandchildren, for family peace. But something inside me had changed. I was tired. Not physically, emotionally. Tired of shrinking myself to make other people comfortable. Lauren kept talking, describing decorations, discussing guest lists, planning seating arrangements. I barely listened. My mind kept returning to the same thought. What would happen if I simply said no? The old Erica would never ask that question. The old Erica believed sacrifice was proof of love. The old Erica believed family came first, no matter what. But where had that gotten me? Years of disrespect. Years of silence. Years of pretending everything was fine. Eventually, Lauren finished her presentation. She smiled confidently. So, what do you think? I looked at her, really looked at her. For years, I had tried to understand her, tried to earn her approval, tried to make peace. But sitting across from her now, I realized something important. Lauren wasn't interested in understanding me. She never had been. The relationship only worked as long as I continued giving. The moment I stopped, everything would change, and maybe that was exactly what needed to happen. I folded the papers neatly, then pushed them back across the table. Lauren blinked. "What are you doing?" "I have a question." She looked confused. "Okay. If my cooking is embarrassing?" I paused. "If it's outdated, unhealthy, old-fashioned, and something people don't eat anymore?" Her expression tightened. "Then why do you keep asking me to cook for every important event in your life?" The silence that followed was almost painful. Lauren opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. No answer came, because there wasn't one. At least not one she wanted to say out loud. The truth was obvious. My food wasn't the problem. I never had been. Lauren simply wanted the benefits of my effort without giving me respect in return. When she finally spoke, her voice sounded colder. "This dinner matters." "I know." "So you'll do it." There it was. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just expectation. I took a deep breath. And for the first time in years, I allowed myself to imagine refusing. Not because I wanted revenge, because I deserved dignity. At that moment, Lauren still believed I would eventually give in. She believed I always would. What she didn't realize was that her visit had accomplished the exact opposite of what she intended. Instead of convincing me to help, she had finally shown me just how little she valued me. And once you truly see someone's respect for you, or their lack of it, it's impossible to unsee. By the time Lauren left my house that afternoon, my decision was almost made. She just didn't know it yet. Neither did Ryan. But very soon, both of them would discover that the woman they had taken for granted for years was no longer willing to play the role they had assigned her. For 3 days after Lauren's visit, I thought about nothing else. Not because her request surprised me. By then, very little about Lauren surprised me. What stayed with me was the look on her face when I questioned her. The brief moment when she couldn't explain why she wanted my cooking while simultaneously looking down on me. That moment revealed more truth than anything she had said over the years. Still, making a decision wasn't easy. I wasn't just refusing Lauren. I was refusing Ryan. I was refusing my grandchildren. I was refusing the role I had played for most of my adult life, and that scared me. On Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang. Ryan. I stared at the screen for several seconds before answering. "Hi, Mom." "Hello, Ryan." His voice sounded unusually cheerful, the kind of cheerful people use when they think a problem has already been solved. "Lauren said the meeting went well?" I smiled slightly. "Of course she did." "I'm glad. So we're moving forward?" I didn't respond. The silence stretched. Finally, Ryan asked, "Mom?" "I'm here." Another pause. Then he laughed nervously. "You are helping with the dinner, right?" There it was. The assumption, not the question. The assumption. I closed my eyes briefly. "Ryan, I haven't agreed to anything." The cheerfulness disappeared immediately. "What do you mean?" "I mean exactly what I said. Mom Lauren spent hours planning this." I almost laughed. The irony was incredible. Lauren spent hours planning. I would spend days working. Yet somehow her effort was the one being defended. "Ryan?" "What? Did Lauren tell you she wanted me hidden in the kitchen?" Silence, the kind of silence that answers the question. My stomach sank. He knew, of course he knew. After a few seconds, he sighed. "It's not like that." I felt anger rising, not explosive anger, something colder, more painful. "Then explain it to me." "Mom, no." For the first time in years, I interrupted him. Explain it. Ryan struggled. I could hear it. He knew how ridiculous it sounded. Finally, he said, Lauren just wants everything to look professional. There was that word again. Professional. I took a slow breath. Do you know what I hear when you say that? What? I hear that your wife is embarrassed by me. That's not true. Then why can't I meet the guests? Ryan didn't answer. Because he couldn't. The truth was standing between us. Neither of us could ignore it anymore. After another long silence, Ryan tried a different approach. Mom, this dinner could help my career. The moment he said it, guilt hit me, because despite everything, I still wanted good things for my son. Ryan had worked hard. He wasn't lazy. He wasn't cruel. He was simply weak when it came to conflict, especially conflict involving Lauren. And for years that weakness had cost me. I understand that. Then please. The word sounded almost desperate. Please help us. Us, not Lauren. Us. For a moment, I nearly gave in. That old instinct returned immediately. The instinct to sacrifice, to smooth things over, to keep everyone happy. Then another thought entered my mind. How many times had I already done that? How many holidays? How many birthdays? How many family dinners, and what had changed? Nothing, because every sacrifice simply taught people to expect another one. Ryan. His voice brightened slightly. Yeah. No. The silence was immediate, complete, stunned. For a second, I wondered if the call had disconnected. Then I heard him whisper, What? I'm not doing it. The words felt strange, heavy, powerful, terrifying, and liberating, all at once. Mom? No. I spoke more firmly this time. I'm not cooking for the dinner. Ryan sounded genuinely shocked, as if the possibility had never crossed his mind. But why? The question almost made me laugh. Why? After everything that had happened, after years of insults, after years of disrespect. Why I realized then that Ryan truly didn't understand? He wasn't pretending. He genuinely couldn't see how much damage had been done. Because I'm tired. Tired. Yes. Mom, it's one dinner. One dinner. I shook my head. No, Ryan. It's 10 years. That finally silenced him. I continued. 10 years of being criticized. Silence. 10 years of being laughed at. Silence. 10 years of pretending things didn't hurt. Nothing. For the first time, I forced him to hear it. Really hear it. I love you, Ryan. His breathing softened. But loving you doesn't mean accepting disrespect forever. Neither of us spoke. Eventually, he said something that broke my heart. I didn't know you felt this way. I closed my eyes. How could he not know? Then again, maybe that's exactly what happens when someone stays silent for too long. People assume you're fine. Eventually, the conversation ended. Not with resolution. Not with understanding. Just exhaustion. When I hung up, I sat quietly for several minutes. My hands were shaking. Not because I regretted my decision. Because standing up for yourself after years of staying silent feels unnatural. Like using a muscle that's been asleep for a decade. The next morning, Lauren called. I let it go to voicemail. Then she called again, and again, and again. 6 times. Finally, she left a message. Ryan told me what you said. Her voice sounded cold, very cold. I think you're being incredibly selfish. I listened without reacting. You know how important this dinner is. Pause. You are punishing us over something that happened weeks ago. Weeks ago. As if the problem had started that night, not years earlier. The message continued. Honestly, I expected better from you. Then she hung up. No apology, no accountability, no reflection, just blame. I deleted the voicemail. That afternoon, something unexpected happened. Emma showed up. Ryan dropped her off because I was watching her after school. The moment she walked into the kitchen, she smiled. Grandma? I hugged her tightly. Immediately, I felt some of the tension leave my body. Children have a way of doing that. We spent the afternoon baking chocolate chip cookies. For the first time in weeks, I felt genuinely happy. Emma measured ingredients. I mixed dough. Benjamin arrived later and immediately stole 3 chocolate chips when he thought nobody was looking. Some things never change. At one point, Emma looked up at me. Grandma. Yes? Are you mad at Mom? The question caught me off guard. I set down the mixing bowl. Why would you ask that? She hesitated, then shrugged. They've been talking about you. Of course they had. Children always hear more than adults realize. I chose my words carefully. I'm not mad. Then what are you? The honesty of children can be startling. I thought for a moment, then answered truthfully. I think I'm finally learning how to stand up for myself. Emma considered that, then nodded, as if it made perfect sense. Maybe it did. Maybe children understand healthy boundaries better than many adults. That evening, after Ryan picked up the kids, I sat alone in my living room. For the first time since refusing Lauren's request, I felt calm. Not happy, not victorious, just calm. The decision had been made. The line had been drawn. Whatever happened next would happen. What I didn't know was that Lauren wasn't finished. Not even close. Because 2 days later, she would make a decision of her own. A decision that would turn a family disagreement into something much bigger. Something public. And once she crossed that line, there would be no going back. I should have known Lauren wouldn't accept my decision quietly. For years, she had always gotten what she wanted. Not because people agreed with her, because people found it easier to give in than argue. Ryan gave in, friends gave in, coworkers gave in, and for a very long time, so did I. So when I finally said no, Lauren didn't see it as a boundary. She saw it as a challenge. 3 days after our phone calls, I woke up to 14 notifications on my phone. At first, I thought something had happened to one of the grandchildren. My heart immediately started racing. But when I picked up the phone, I realized it was something else entirely. Messages. Lots of messages. Friends from church, former neighbors, people I hadn't spoken to in months. Every message carried the same tone. Concern. Confusion. Sympathy. I opened the first one. Erica, I hope you're okay. The second. Just wanted to check on you. The third. There's always another side to every story. My stomach tightened. What story? Then I saw a message from one of my closest friends, Martha. Have you seen Lauren's post? Immediately, I knew. I clicked the link, and there it was. Lauren had written a lengthy social media post, not using my name, not directly, but anyone who knew our family would understand exactly who she was talking about. The post began, "Sometimes the people you help the most end up hurting you." I stared at the screen, then kept reading. Lauren described an unnamed family member who was supposedly refusing to support her family during an important time. She talked about sacrifice, loyalty, family obligations. She described herself as a stressed wife trying to support her husband's career. Then she wrote something that made my chest tighten. Some people weaponize kindness when they don't get the appreciation they think they deserve. Weaponize kindness. According to Lauren, I wasn't standing up for myself. I was punishing them. The comments were already pouring in. Many people supported her. Some called the unnamed family member selfish. Others talked about older relatives who held grudges. A few even shared stories about difficult mothers-in-law. The worst part, Lauren never technically lied. She simply left out every detail that mattered. She didn't mention 10 years of insults. She didn't mention the social media posts. She didn't mention wanting me hidden in the kitchen. She didn't mention treating me like hired help. She presented herself as a victim. And without context, it was a convincing story. I sat at my kitchen table reading the comments. The old version of me would have cried. The old version of me would have immediately called Ryan. The old version of me would have tried to fix everything. Instead, I felt something unexpected. Disappointment. Not devastation. Not rage. Just disappointment. Because Lauren's post told me something important. She truly believed she was the victim. After everything, she genuinely couldn't see her own behavior. That realization was sadder than anything else. Around noon, Ryan called. His voice sounded exhausted. "Mom." "Hello, Ryan." Long silence. Then, "Did you see it?" "Yes." Another silence. I waited. Eventually, he sighed. "I told her not to post it." That surprised me. Not because Ryan disagreed with her, because he had actually spoken up. "What happened?" Ryan sounded frustrated. "We argued." The word caught my attention. Argued. Ryan almost never argued with Lauren. About what? Everything? For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Ryan said something I hadn't expected. "I told her she was being unfair." I blinked. For years I had waited to hear him defend me, and now finally something was beginning to shift. Not enough. Not yet. But something. "What did she say?" Ryan laughed bitterly. "That you're manipulating me. Of course she did. When that didn't work, she said you're trying to destroy my career." I shook my head slowly. Amazing. The ability some people have to rewrite reality. Ryan continued. "I don't know what to do anymore." For the first time in years, he sounded genuinely lost. Not defensive, not dismissive. Lost. And strangely, I felt sorry for him. Because Ryan had spent so many years avoiding conflict that he never realized conflict doesn't disappear. It simply grows. Now everything he had avoided was finally catching up with him. "Ryan, yeah, you don't have to choose between your wife and your mother." The silence on the other end felt heavy. "Then why does it feel like I do?" Because the real issue wasn't choosing between people. It was choosing between truth and comfort. But I wasn't ready to say that yet. Instead, I said, "You only need to choose what's right." After we hung up, I expected the situation to calm down. Instead, it got worse. Much worse. That evening, Emma called me. She sounded upset. Again. "Grandma, what's wrong, sweetheart?" She hesitated, then said, "Mom's crying." I immediately sat up straighter. "What happened?" "I don't know." Her voice cracked slightly. "Mom and Dad keep arguing." My heart sank. No grandparent wants children caught in the middle of adult problems. "Listen to me. Okay. This isn't your fault. I know." But she didn't sound convinced. Children rarely do. After we talked for a few more minutes, she finally sounded calmer. When the call ended, I sat staring out the window. The situation had started with cooking. Now it was affecting the entire family. Part of me wondered if I should simply give in. Just do the dinner. End the conflict. Restore the peace. The thought lasted less than a minute because I finally understood something. The peace we used to have wasn't real. It had always depended on my silence, and peace built on one person's silence isn't peace at all. It's surrender. The following afternoon, I received another surprise. Samuel Whitmore called. I almost let it go to voicemail. Then I answered. "Hello, Erica?" His voice sounded warm. "How are you?" I laughed softly. "Do you want the honest answer? Always?" For the next 20 minutes, I told him everything. Not every detail, but enough. The years of criticism, the dinner party, the social media post, the growing tension inside my family. Samuel listened without interrupting. When I finally finished, there was silence. Then he asked a simple question. "Do you know what your problem is?" I laughed. "I have several." "No." His tone was gentle. "You've spent so many years proving your value to other people that you've forgotten it exists without their approval." The words hit harder than I expected, because deep down, I knew he was right. For years, I had measured my worth through service. Cooking, helping, giving, sacrificing. And now that I had stopped, I felt guilty, as if my value had disappeared. Samuel continued. "People respected Night's Kitchen because of you." I smiled sadly. That was a long time ago. "No." His voice became firmer. "It wasn't." Then he said something that immediately captured my attention. "Meet me for lunch tomorrow." I frowned. "Why?" "Because I want to show you something." "What?" Samuel laughed. "You'll find out tomorrow." I shook my head. "You always were mysterious. And you always hated surprises." He wasn't wrong. Before hanging up, he added one final sentence. One sentence that stayed with me for the rest of the evening. "Erica, I think it's time you remembered who you are." At that moment, I had no idea that lunch with Samuel would become the turning point of my entire story. Because what he was about to offer me would change everything, not just for me, for Ryan, for Lauren, for our entire family. I didn't answer Samuel immediately. In fact, after lunch ended, I drove around town for nearly an hour before going home. My emotions were all over the place. Part of me was excited. Another part was terrified. At 67 years old, most people expect life to get smaller, not bigger. People talk about slowing down, retirement, taking it easy. Very few people hand you a new opportunity and ask you to begin again, especially after you've spent years convincing yourself your best days are behind you. When I finally pulled into my driveway, I sat in my car and stared at the house. Michael would have known exactly what to say. That thought hit me unexpectedly. For years after his death, I had found myself reaching for the phone whenever something important happened. Then I'd remember, he's gone. That pain never completely disappears. You simply learn how to carry it. I closed my eyes and imagined him sitting beside me, his weathered hands, his crooked smile, the way he always looked at problems differently than I did. I already knew what he would say. "Why are you scared?" And I would answer, "What if I fail?" Then he would laugh, the same laugh I could still hear in my memory. "What if you don't?" By the time I walked into the house, my mood had changed, not completely, but enough. That evening, I called Samuel. He answered on the second ring. "Well," I smiled, "you sound confident." "I am." "Why, because I know you." I laughed. "No, you don't." "Sure I do." He sounded completely certain. "You're going to say yes." I sat down at my kitchen table, the same table where I had spent so many weeks questioning my value, the same table where Lauren had spread out her instructions like I was an employee, the same table where I had cried after reading her social media posts. Funny how quickly life can change. I haven't decided yet. You're lying. I laughed again. For the first time in weeks, the sound felt genuine. Maybe. Samuel waited. Eventually, I took a deep breath. Tell me what happens next. His excitement was impossible to miss. The next 30 minutes passed in a blur. He explained everything. The Sunday table was already moving forward. The location had been secured. Renovations had begun. Investors were interested. A management team was in place. What Samuel needed was authenticity. Someone who understood the emotional side of food. Someone who understood family traditions. Someone who could help develop recipes and shape the restaurant's identity. In other words, he wanted me. The idea still felt surreal. When the call ended, I found myself smiling. Not because everything was solved, because for the first time in years, I felt needed for something beyond sacrifice. The following week, Samuel introduced me to the project team. That's how I met Olivia Bennett. She was 32 years old, bright, energetic, and constantly moving. Within 5 minutes of meeting her, I was exhausted just watching her. Within 10 minutes, I liked her. She reminded me of the kind of person I used to be before grief slowed me down. She shook my hand enthusiastically. Oh my gosh. I blinked. What? You're Erica Knight. I glanced at Samuel. He looked amused. Olivia laughed. I've heard so much about you. Immediately, I felt uncomfortable. I think Samuel exaggerates. He absolutely does not. She pointed at me. My grandparents talked about Knight's kitchen constantly. I stared at her. Your grandparents? Every Sunday. She smiled. My grandmother still talks about your peach cobbler. Something warm spread through my chest. Moments like that never stopped surprising me, because for so many years I had listened to Lauren's voice, and Lauren had convinced me that everything I represented belonged in the past. Yet everywhere I turned, people kept telling me a different story. The first official meeting lasted several hours. We discussed menus, atmosphere, customer experience, community events. By the end, my notebook was filled with ideas. For the first time in years, my mind felt alive. When I returned home that evening, I was exhausted. But it was a good exhaustion, the kind that comes from purpose. Unfortunately, the peace didn't last long. 2 days later, Ryan called. The moment I answered, I could hear tension in his voice. Mom? Hello? Lauren wants to know if you've changed your mind. I closed my eyes. Of course, the dinner party was now only a little over a week away. No. Ryan sighed. I waited. Then he said something surprising. I told her you wouldn't. That caught my attention. You did? Yeah. There was a long pause. Then he added quietly, she wasn't happy. I almost smiled. For years, Ryan had spent his life trying to avoid upsetting Lauren. Now he was beginning to accept that some conversations couldn't be avoided. Progress. Small progress. But progress. We talked for a few minutes, mostly about the kids, school, soccer practice, normal things. The conversation felt different than usual. Less defensive, less tense, almost honest. Before hanging up, Ryan hesitated, then asked, What have you been doing lately? The question surprised me. Nobody had asked me that in a long time. Not seriously, not with genuine interest. So, I told him, not everything, just enough. I mentioned helping Samuel with a project. Silence. Then, what kind of project? A restaurant. More silence. I could practically hear his confusion. A restaurant? Yes. You, I laughed. Yes, Ryan, me. His surprise was so obvious that it almost hurt, not because he meant to be cruel, Because he had unconsciously stopped seeing me as someone capable of new things, just like everyone else, including me. Wow. That was all he said. Just wow. But there was something underneath it. Respect. The beginning of it, anyway. After we hung up, I thought about the conversation for a long time. People often assume respect disappears in a single moment. Sometimes it does, but more often it fades gradually. One small dismissal at a time. One ignored contribution at a time. One taken for granted sacrifice at a time. And rebuilding it works the same way. Slowly, piece by piece. The next afternoon, I visited the restaurant site. Construction crews were everywhere. The building was still unfinished. Dust covered most surfaces. Power tools echoed through the rooms. Yet somehow, standing there felt familiar. It reminded me of the early days of Knight's Kitchen, back when Michael and I had built something from nothing. I walked through the space slowly, touching walls, imagining tables, imagining families, imagining conversations. Memories flooded back. Not painful memories, good ones, the kind I hadn't allowed myself to revisit for years. At one point, Olivia joined me. "What are you thinking about?" I smiled. "My husband." She nodded, as if she understood. Maybe she did. Then she pointed toward the future dining area. "Can you picture it?" I looked around, and for the first time, I truly could. Families laughing, friends gathering, children running between tables, the smell of fresh bread, the sound of conversation. Life. I smiled, and Olivia smiled too. Neither of us realized it at the time, but across town, Lauren was dealing with a problem of her own. A very expensive problem. Because the catering company she had hired after losing me had just canceled, and when she found out, panic would begin setting in. The same panic that would soon bring her right back to my doorstep. The knock on my door came at exactly 8:12 on a Thursday evening. I remember the time because I had just settled into my favorite chair with a cup of tea and a notebook full of menu ideas for the Sunday table. For the first time in years, my evenings felt productive instead of lonely. When the knock came again, louder this time, I frowned. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door. Lauren stood on my porch. The moment I saw her face, I knew something was wrong. Not emotionally wrong, practically wrong. Lauren wasn't the type to show vulnerability unless she absolutely had to. And right now, she looked stressed. Very stressed. Her hair was pulled back carelessly. Her makeup looked rushed. Dark circles sat beneath her eyes. She looked like someone who hadn't slept much. For a brief moment, I felt sympathy. Then I remembered the social media post, the years of insults, the expectation, the entitlement. My sympathy cooled considerably. Lauren. Erica. No smile. No small talk. Straight to business. Again. "We need to talk." I stepped aside. She walked into the house. The same house she once described as looking like a museum. Funny how often people return to places they claim not to like. We sat at the kitchen table. Lauren didn't waste time. "The catering company canceled." There it was. I nodded slowly. "I see." Her jaw tightened. That wasn't the reaction she wanted. She wanted panic, concern, immediate offers of help. Instead, she got calm. "The owner called this morning," she continued quickly. "Apparently they overbooked another event." I listened quietly. "The dinner is next week." Another pause. "I've called 6 other companies." I nodded again. "That sounds frustrating." Lauren stared at me, waiting. I knew exactly what she was waiting for. The rescue, the automatic offer, the old Erica. But the old Erica wasn't sitting across from her anymore. When I didn't volunteer, Lauren finally said it. "We need your help." There was something fascinating about the way she phrased it. Not, "I'd like your help." Not, "Could you help need," as if need automatically created obligation. I folded my hands. "Lauren." "What? I thought we already discussed this." Her frustration immediately surfaced. "This is different." "How? Because now we're in a crisis?" I almost laughed. A crisis. No one was in the hospital. No one was homeless. No one was starving. A dinner party was in trouble. Apparently, that qualified as a crisis. "I'm sorry the caterer canceled." Her eyes narrowed. But my answer hasn't changed." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Lauren leaned back in her chair. I recognized the expression immediately. She was switching strategies. The first strategy had failed. Now, she was trying another. "Ryan really needs this." There it was, the guilt approach. Not help me. Help Ryan. I expected it. What I didn't expect was how little effect it had this time, because now I could see it clearly. The manipulation, the emotional pressure, the attempt to make me responsible for choices that weren't mine. I love Ryan. I know. But this dinner isn't my responsibility. Lauren looked genuinely stunned, as if she had never heard those words before. "You're really going to do this?" The question irritated me, because it suggested I was the one causing the problem, not the person who spent years disrespecting me, not the person who drove away the help she needed. Me. I remained calm. "I'm not doing anything." "Seriously? You made choices." Her face hardened. "What does that mean?" "It means actions have consequences." The room became very quiet. For several seconds, Lauren simply stared at me. Then she laughed. A short, bitter laugh. "I can't believe this." Neither could I. Not for the reasons she thought. I couldn't believe how long it had taken me to stop accepting this treatment. Lauren stood abruptly. "Fine." I remained seated. "Fine. Fine." She grabbed her purse. "If that's how you want to be." Then she left. The front door slammed behind her. For a few moments, I sat perfectly still. My heart was racing. Not because I regretted my decision, because standing firm still felt unfamiliar, even now. The next morning, Ryan called. Of course he did. I almost didn't answer. Eventually, I picked up. "Hi, Mom?" He sounded exhausted, again. I was beginning to suspect nobody in that house had slept well for weeks. "Hello?" Long silence. Then, Lauren told me what happened. I waited. To my surprise, Ryan didn't immediately defend her. Instead, he sighed. A very long sigh. "I'm sorry she came over." That caught me off guard. "What?" "I'm sorry." For a moment, I genuinely didn't know how to respond. Ryan almost never apologized. Not because he was arrogant. Because he preferred pretending problems didn't exist. Acknowledging them required confronting them. And confrontation wasn't his strength. "Thank you." Another silence. Then he asked quietly, "Are you happy?" The question surprised me. Happy? Since all of this started. I thought carefully before answering. "No." Ryan sounded relieved, as if my unhappiness somehow proved something. But I wasn't finished. "I'm not happy." He waited. "I'm healthier." The silence afterward lasted nearly 10 seconds. I continued. "There's a difference." Ryan didn't answer immediately. Eventually he said, "I don't know what that means." I smiled sadly. "That's because I've spent years teaching everyone that my feelings matter less than keeping peace." Nothing. Now I'm trying to learn something different. When the call ended, I felt strangely emotional. Not because everything was fixed. Far from it. But Ryan was finally listening. Really listening. For the first time in years. That afternoon, I met with Olivia and Samuel. We spent several hours testing recipes, adjusting ingredients, planning menu items. At one point, Olivia tasted a modified version of my chicken pot pie. The same chicken pot pie Lauren constantly criticized. Olivia closed her eyes, then immediately pointed at me. That's it. I laughed. That's the one. Samuel tasted it too, then nodded. Absolutely. The two of them spent the next 5 minutes discussing how popular it would be. Meanwhile, I sat there feeling something almost surreal. People were valuing my work, not tolerating it, not using it, valuing it. The difference was enormous. As the meeting ended, Samuel walked me to my car. Before I got in, he asked a question. How's Ryan? I sighed. Confused. Samuel nodded. Good. I stared at him. Good. Confusion is often the first step. The first step toward what? His answer was immediate. Growth. I thought about that all evening. Maybe he was right. Maybe Ryan needed to be uncomfortable. Maybe all of us did, because comfort had allowed unhealthy patterns to survive for years. The following morning, another surprise arrived. Not Lauren, not Ryan, someone else. A phone call from one of Ryan's co-workers, a woman named Diane. I barely knew her, yet she sounded nervous. Mrs. Knight. Yes, I hope this isn't inappropriate. Immediately, I became curious. What is it? There was hesitation. Then she said something that made my eyebrows rise. I think you should know what's being said about you at Ryan's company. My stomach tightened, because suddenly I understood. The dinner party wasn't just affecting the family anymore. The situation was spreading, and whatever Lauren had been telling people was about to create consequences she never anticipated. I sat down slowly after Diane's phone call. For several seconds, I simply stared at the wall. What exactly do you mean? I had asked her. The answer still echoed in my mind. I think Lauren has been telling people that you're refusing to help because you're angry about not being appreciated. At first, that didn't seem too terrible. Then Diane continued. Some people think you're trying to sabotage Ryan. That was different. Very different. I wasn't worried about my reputation. At 67 years old, I had learned that people would believe whatever version of a story made the most sense to them. What worried me was Ryan. Because unlike me, he still had a career to protect. Office politics can be complicated. Perception matters, and once a false narrative starts spreading, it can be difficult to stop. Diane sounded uncomfortable. I wasn't sure if I should call. I'm glad you did. I don't think Ryan knows how much people are talking. That part didn't surprise me. Ryan often missed things happening right in front of him. Not because he wasn't intelligent, because he preferred avoiding conflict. Unfortunately, avoidance has a way of creating larger problems. After we ended the call, I spent most of the morning thinking. Part of me wanted to call Ryan immediately. Another part wanted to stay out of it. For years, I had stepped in whenever there was a problem. Maybe it was time for Ryan to handle one himself. Around lunchtime, my phone rang. Ryan. Apparently, I wouldn't have to make the decision. Mom? His voice sounded strained, more strained than usual. Something had happened. What is it? Long pause, then, the dinner is falling apart. I closed my eyes. Not because I was surprised, because I wasn't. I had been expecting something like this. What happened? Everything. His laugh sounded exhausted. The replacement caterer wants almost double the original price. I listened quietly. Half the guests haven't confirmed. Another pause. Lauren is furious. That part was predictable. What about you? The question surprised him. How are you? Silence. Then another tired laugh. I don't know. For the first time in a very long time, Ryan sounded honest. Not defensive, not diplomatic, just honest. I'm exhausted. I felt a small ache in my chest. Because despite everything, he was still my son. I know. No, Mom. I mean, really exhausted. He exhaled slowly. I feel like I'm trying to hold everything together. The irony was impossible to miss. For years, I had felt exactly the same way, holding things together, protecting everyone else's comfort, absorbing tension so others wouldn't have to. Now Ryan was finally experiencing it himself. I didn't say that. Instead, I listened. Sometimes people don't need advice. They need space. After a few moments, Ryan spoke again. Can I ask you something? Of course. Are you really happy working on that restaurant project? The question caught me off guard. I smiled despite myself. Yes. His response was immediate. I can hear it. What do you mean? You sound different. I thought about that. Maybe he was right. For years, my conversations had revolved around obligations, family schedules, meals, helping other people. Now there was something else. Purpose, excitement, hope, even if I didn't always realize it. Maybe I am different. Ryan didn't respond right away. Then he said something unexpected. I'm glad. The words hit me harder than they should have. Because for years, I had secretly worried that Ryan only valued what I did for him, not who I was. Hearing genuine happiness in his voice mattered. A lot. The conversation ended on a surprisingly peaceful note, but the peace didn't last long. That Saturday evening was Lauren's dinner party, the dinner party that had caused all this chaos. The dinner party she insisted would change Ryan's career. The dinner party she believed couldn't happen without me. And technically, she was right, because without me, everything began unraveling. At 6 o'clock, I was helping Olivia test dessert recipes when my phone buzzed. A text from Ryan. Only 4 words. It's a disaster. I stared at the message. Then another arrived. Call me later. I exchanged a glance with Olivia. What happened? I smiled faintly. Family drama. She laughed. I'll pray for you. A few hours later, after I got home, Ryan finally called. The exhaustion in his voice was even worse than before. How bad? I asked. He laughed. Not a happy laugh. The kind people use when they're too tired to be angry anymore. Where do I start? Apparently, the replacement catering company arrived late. Several dishes were missing. 2 hot trays never showed up. The serving staff was understaffed. Food temperatures were wrong. Presentation was sloppy. Guests noticed. Important guests. The kind Lauren desperately wanted to impress. At one point, according to Ryan, a senior executive quietly asked if everything was okay. That question alone nearly sent Lauren into a panic. As Ryan described the evening, I couldn't help remembering all the times Lauren had criticized my cooking. Too simple, too old-fashioned, too plain. Yet somehow, none of those meals had ever arrived late. None had ever been missing. None had embarrassed anyone. Because I cared. Not about appearances, about people. Eventually, Ryan sighed. I should have listened. I didn't answer immediately. To what? You. The words hung between us. Then he continued. I kept thinking this was about food. A painful silence followed. It wasn't, was it? I stared out my window into the darkness. No. Ryan's voice softened. I think I'm finally starting to understand that. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he told me something that genuinely surprised me. One of the executives attending the event had mentioned hearing about a new restaurant project in town. The Sunday Table. Apparently, Samuel Whitmore's involvement had already attracted attention. Several guests knew about it. Several were curious. One executive even mentioned hearing rumors that a local culinary legend was helping develop the menu. I laughed softly. Culinary legend. Ryan laughed too. For the first time that evening, it sounded genuine. That's what he said. Then came a pause. A meaningful pause. Finally, Ryan asked, "Was he talking about you?" I smiled. Maybe for the first time in years, I didn't feel embarrassed by the answer. Maybe. The silence afterward felt different. Not uncomfortable. Reflective. Then Ryan whispered something that nearly broke my heart. I don't think I've appreciated you enough. I closed my eyes. For years, I had wanted to hear those words. Yet now that they had finally arrived, they didn't feel like victory. They felt sad, because of everything it had taken to get there. Eventually, we ended the call. I sat alone for a long time afterward, thinking. The dinner party had failed. But strangely, that wasn't what mattered anymore. What mattered was what Ryan was beginning to see. The truth. Not all of it. Not yet. But enough. Enough to start asking questions. Enough to start examining the stories he had accepted for years. And once people begin questioning old assumptions, change becomes possible. What I didn't know was that Lauren had experienced the evening very differently. While Ryan had walked away, humbled Lauren had walked away furious. Not embarrassed, not reflective, furious. Because in her mind, someone was responsible for the disaster. And she had already decided who that someone was. Me. Unfortunately for Lauren, she was about to make a very public mistake. One that would expose far more about her character than mine. The next Monday morning, I woke up to another storm. Only this time, it wasn't subtle. It wasn't whispered conversations. It wasn't secondhand comments. It was direct, public, and impossible to ignore. The first sign came when Martha called before 9 o'clock. "Erica." Her voice sounded concerned. What happened now? That question alone told me enough. I sighed. Tell me. Lauren posted again. Of course she did. For a moment, I simply closed my eyes. Part of me wasn't even surprised anymore. People who refuse to take responsibility often become more aggressive when reality doesn't cooperate with their version of events. The failed dinner party hadn't humbled Lauren. It had embarrassed her. And embarrassment can be dangerous in the hands of someone who always needs to be right. After ending the call, I opened social media. There it was. Another long post, longer than the previous one. More emotional, more dramatic, and significantly more dishonest. This time, Lauren didn't hide behind vague language. She still didn't use my name directly, but she made her target obvious. She described an older family member who had supposedly abandoned the family during an important moment. She suggested that pride had become more important than love. She implied that certain people enjoyed watching others fail. By the time I reached the end, I felt tired more than angry. Because the post wasn't actually about me. It was about Lauren protecting her ego. The comments poured in almost immediately. Some supported her, others asked questions. A few people seemed skeptical. One comment caught my attention. If this family member is so terrible, why did you keep asking her to cook? Interesting. Apparently, not everyone was accepting Lauren's story without question. Then another comment appeared. And if her cooking is bad, why was she your first choice? Even more interesting. Questions. People were starting to ask questions. And questions are dangerous when your story depends on missing information. I put down my phone. For the first time, I felt no desire to defend myself publicly. A few weeks earlier, I would have panicked. I would have worried about what people thought. Now I realized something important. The people who truly knew me didn't need an explanation. And the people who didn't know me weren't worth fighting with online. By lunchtime, the situation had become stranger. 3 separate people called me, not to criticize me, to support me. Former customers, old friends, people I hadn't spoken to in years. One woman left a voicemail that nearly made me cry. Erica, I don't know what's happening in your family, but I wanted you to know that some of my favorite memories happened in your restaurant. Don't let anyone make you forget who you are. I listened to that message 3 times, not because I needed validation, because I needed perspective. For so many years, Lauren's voice had become the loudest one in my life. Now I was finally hearing other voices again, and they told a very different story. Around 2 o'clock, Samuel called. The moment I answered, he laughed. I assume you've seen it. Unfortunately. How are you holding up? I looked out the kitchen window. Surprisingly, the answer came easily. I'm okay. Good. I smiled. That's all you have to say? No. His tone shifted. I also think Lauren is making a mistake. That got my attention. What kind of mistake? The kind people make when they believe everyone sees the world the same way they do. I thought about that. Samuel continued. She's trying to control the narrative. Maybe. No. His answer was immediate. Definitely. Then he added something interesting. And she's losing control of it. That surprised me. What makes you say that? Because I've already received 3 phone calls. I blinked. About what? The posts. Now I was genuinely confused. Why would anyone call you? Samuel laughed. Because people know we're working together. That realization hadn't occurred to me. Apparently news about the Sunday table was spreading faster than I realized. And with that came curiosity. Questions, conversations, public attention. The very things Lauren desperately wanted to avoid. Samuel sounded amused. One person actually asked if you were really helping with the restaurant. What did you say? The truth? I waited. He asked if you were as talented as people claimed. My stomach tightened. And Samuel laughed again. I told him they were understating it. I rolled my eyes. You always exaggerate. No. His voice softened. I don't. The conversation left me emotional. Not because of the compliment, because of the contrast. One person constantly searched for reasons to diminish me. Another constantly reminded me of my value. The difference was impossible to ignore. Later that afternoon, I arrived at the Sunday table for another planning session. The atmosphere was busy, energetic, exciting. Workers moved through the building. Paint crews finished walls. Furniture deliveries arrived. The place finally looked like a real restaurant, not just a construction project. As I walked through the dining room, Olivia approached holding a clipboard. She looked excited, very excited. Erica. What happened? You need to see this. Immediately, I became suspicious. She practically dragged me into a small office, then handed me a stack of papers. I frowned. What am I looking at? Feedback. From who? Potential customers. Over the previous week, the team had apparently conducted local surveys and community outreach. People had been asked what they wanted from a restaurant, what they missed, what made them feel at home. I began reading. Again and again, the same themes appeared. Comfort, family, tradition, connection. Then I noticed something else. Many people specifically referenced dishes similar to the ones Lauren constantly criticized. Pot pies, roast chicken, homemade biscuits, fruit cobblers, classic comfort food, the very meals Lauren described as outdated. I looked up. Olivia smiled. See, I couldn't help smiling back. Maybe the world wasn't changing as much as Lauren thought. Maybe people still wanted authenticity. Maybe people were tired of pretending that everything old had become worthless. For the next several hours, I worked alongside the team. And somewhere during that process, I realized something. I wasn't merely helping a restaurant. I was rebuilding myself. Piece by piece, confidence, purpose, identity. Things I had slowly surrendered over the years. Things I was finally reclaiming. When I returned home that evening, I found a voicemail waiting. Ryan. His voice sounded unusually serious. Mom, call me when you get this. No explanation, no details, just urgency. My stomach tightened. I immediately returned the call. Ryan answered on the first ring. Mom, what happened? Long silence. Then I finally saw the posts. I frowned. What do you mean, the comments? His voice sounded different, colder, more focused. I read all of them. Something in his tone made me sit down. Then he said words I never expected to hear. Lauren lied. The room suddenly felt very quiet, because after years of defending her, after years of excusing her, after years of pretending not to see what was happening, Ryan was finally seeing it too. And once that door opens, it's impossible to close again. For several seconds after Ryan said those words, neither of us spoke. Lauren lied. I sat at my kitchen table gripping the phone a little tighter, not because I was shocked. Deep down, I had known for a long time that Lauren's version of events wasn't truthful. What stunned me was hearing Ryan say it. Ryan, the same man who had spent years defending her. The same man who always found a reason to explain away her behavior. The same man who had looked down at his plate instead of speaking when she humiliated me. Now, he was finally seeing what I had lived with for years. What happened? I asked quietly. Ryan exhaled, a long, exhausted breath. We had a fight. That didn't surprise me. What kind of fight? The kind we should have had a long time ago. I leaned back in my chair. Outside, rain tapped softly against the kitchen window. The sound seemed to match the heaviness in his voice. Ryan continued. After the dinner party failed, I started thinking. I listened. Then I started reading. Reading what? The posts. His voice grew colder. The comments. Another pause. The messages. My stomach tightened. What messages? Ryan laughed bitterly. The messages Lauren sent people. That got my attention. What are you talking about? Silence? Then, Mom, she wasn't just posting online? A chill ran through me. Apparently, Lauren had been privately messaging people too. Co-workers, neighbors, mutual friends, anyone connected to the dinner party. Anyone who might influence how the situation was viewed. And according to Ryan, the stories became more dramatic each time she told them. In some versions, I had abandoned the family. In others, I was trying to control Ryan. In one particularly ridiculous version, I was supposedly jealous of Lauren's success. I actually laughed when Ryan told me that. Not because it was funny, because it was absurd. Jealous. I know. His embarrassment was obvious. For years, he had believed the best about Lauren. Now he was confronting a reality he didn't want to see. I confronted her. What did she say? Ryan was quiet for several seconds. Then he answered. She said everyone exaggerates. I closed my eyes. Of course. No accountability. No ownership. Just another excuse. Then what? We argued. His voice hardened. Really argued. For the first time, I realized how much pain Ryan was carrying. Because this wasn't just about me. This was about his marriage, his trust, his understanding of the person he shared his life with. And those things were beginning to crack. Eventually, Ryan said something that made my chest ache. "I should have protected you." The words came quietly, almost like a confession. I didn't answer immediately, because I knew how difficult those words were for him. I should have said something years ago. Still, I remained silent. Not because I was angry, because I wanted him to keep talking. Sometimes people need space to tell the truth, even when that truth hurts. I kept telling myself it wasn't a big deal. His voice cracked slightly. Every joke. Pause. Every comment. Pause. Every time Lauren embarrassed you. I stared at the rain outside. I knew it bothered you. Another pause. I just didn't want to deal with the conflict. There it was. The truth. Not cruelty. Cowardice. Not hatred. Avoidance. Ryan hadn't hurt me because he didn't love me. He had hurt me because confronting Lauren felt harder than disappointing me. And for years, I had absorbed the consequences of that choice. Eventually, I spoke. "Thank you." Ryan sounded surprised. "For what?" "For being honest." The silence that followed felt different. Lighter somehow. Not because everything was fixed. Because the truth was finally in the room. When the call ended, I sat quietly for a long time. Part of me wanted to cry. Part of me wanted to celebrate. Instead, I felt something else. Relief. Not because Ryan had chosen my side. Because he had finally stopped hiding from reality. The next afternoon, Ryan appeared at my front door. Alone. No Lauren. No children. Just Ryan. The moment I opened the door, I knew this wasn't a casual visit. His shoulders looked heavy. His eyes tired. He seemed older somehow. Not physically. Emotionally. Life has a way of aging people quickly when they finally face things they've avoided for years. We sat in the kitchen. The same kitchen where so many difficult conversations had happened recently. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Then Ryan looked around the room. "I haven't sat in here like this in years." I smiled sadly. "No." He nodded. Then he looked at me. Really looked at me. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt seen. Not as a mother. Not as a cook. Not as someone who existed to help. As a person. "I'm sorry." The words were simple, but they carried weight. Years of weight. I said nothing. Ryan continued. "Not just for recently." His eyes lowered. "For all of it." My throat tightened. The sincerity in his voice was impossible to miss. "I let things happen." He swallowed hard. And every time I told myself I was keeping peace. A bitter smile appeared. But I wasn't. He looked directly at me. "I was letting you carry the cost." The room became very quiet. I thought about every holiday dinner, every family gathering, every humiliating comment, every moment I waited for him to speak. Then I thought about the young boy who used to help Michael wash dishes in the restaurant after school. The boy who hated seeing anyone upset. The boy who loved deeply but feared conflict. That boy was still sitting in front of me, just older, and finally learning. "I know." Ryan nodded slowly. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Then he asked something unexpected. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I almost laughed. Not because the question was funny, because it was heartbreaking. "Tell you what, how much it hurt." I looked down at my hands. The answer came easily. Because I didn't think it would matter. Ryan looked devastated, and immediately I regretted my honesty. Not because it wasn't true, because of how deeply it wounded him. I was wrong. His voice sounded raw. I should have made it matter. The conversation lasted nearly 2 hours. We talked about Michael, the restaurant, family, Lauren, everything. For the first time in years, nothing felt hidden. No pretending, no avoiding, just truth. When Ryan finally stood to leave, he hesitated near the door. Then he asked one final question. Can I still fix this? I thought carefully before answering. Not because I didn't know, because I wanted to be fair. You can't change the past. He nodded. But you can decide who you want to be going forward. The words seemed to settle inside him, slowly, meaningfully. Then he hugged me. A real hug, not rushed, not distracted, the kind I hadn't received from him in years. After he left, I stood in the doorway watching his car disappear down the street. For the first time since this entire ordeal began, I felt hopeful about my son. Not because he was perfect, because he was growing. Unfortunately, not everyone was growing. Because while Ryan was finally accepting responsibility, Lauren was moving in the opposite direction, and within 48 hours, she would make one final attempt to regain control of the situation. An attempt that would fail so spectacularly that even she would be unable to deny the truth any longer. 2 days after Ryan visited me, Lauren called. I knew it was her because I had memorized the pattern by now. When Lauren wanted something, she called repeatedly. When she wanted control, she called immediately. And when she was desperate, she showed up in person. This time she called 3 times. I didn't answer. Then a text appeared. We need to talk. Not can we talk? Not please call me. Just, we need to talk. I stared at the message for several seconds. Then I put my phone down and continued reviewing menu notes for the Sunday table. 10 minutes later, another text arrived. This is important. I ignored that one too. By evening, she was standing on my porch. Part of me wasn't surprised. Lauren had always struggled with boundaries, especially when those boundaries belonged to someone else. When I opened the door, she looked different. Not humbled, not remorseful, frustrated. The kind of frustration that comes from losing control of a situation. Can I come in? I hesitated, then nodded. Not because I wanted to, because I wanted whatever this was to finally end. We sat at the kitchen table, the same kitchen where so much of our conflict had unfolded. For several moments, Lauren remained silent. That alone was unusual. Normally, she filled every empty space with words. Eventually, she spoke. Ryan told me about your restaurant. I smiled slightly. It's not my restaurant. You know what I mean. I waited. Lauren folded her arms. People are talking about it. There was something underneath her words. Something sharp, something uncomfortable, jealousy. For the first time, I recognized it clearly. Not jealousy of money, not jealousy of success, jealousy of attention. For years, Lauren had enjoyed being the center of every room. Now conversations were shifting elsewhere. Toward me, toward the Sunday table, toward possibilities she couldn't control. What do you want, Lauren? The directness surprised her. Good. I was tired of dancing around things. She took a deep breath, then said something I never expected. I think we should work together. For a moment, I genuinely thought I had misunderstood. What? Work together? I stared at her. She continued speaking rapidly, almost as if she had rehearsed the conversation. I have experience with branding. Another sentence. Marketing. Another. Social media. Then she smiled, the same business smile from before. We could help each other. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything, the insults, the humiliation, the public attacks, now she wanted a partnership, not reconciliation. Partnership. The difference mattered a lot. What exactly are you proposing? Lauren leaned forward. Immediately her energy changed. She became excited, confident. This was the version of Lauren that appeared whenever she smelled opportunity. We create content. I blinked. What videos? She gestured enthusiastically. Recipes. Another gesture. Cooking tips. Another. Family traditions. The irony was breathtaking. Family traditions. The very thing she spent years mocking. Lauren kept talking. We build a brand around your story. Your story. Interesting. Not our relationship. Not healing. Not accountability. A brand. A business. A project. I listened quietly. The longer she spoke, the clearer something became. Lauren wasn't here because she respected me. She was here because people were paying attention to me, and she wanted access to that attention. Finally, she finished. The room became quiet. I folded my hands, then asked a simple question. Why? She frowned. What do you mean, why now? Lauren looked confused, so I clarified. You spent years criticizing my cooking. Silence. You mocked my recipes. Silence. You publicly embarrassed me. More silence. Why would you suddenly want to build a business around something you've spent years attacking? The question hit harder than I expected. For the first time during the conversation, Lauren looked uncomfortable. Not guilty. Just uncomfortable. Eventually, she shrugged. People change. I almost laughed, not because the answer was funny, because it was so obviously incomplete. No. Her expression hardened slightly. No, what? No. I shook my head. People can change. I looked directly at her. But change requires honesty. The room grew very quiet. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then Lauren asked the question that revealed everything. What would it take? There it was. Not what can I do to make things right. Not how can we heal. Not how badly did I hurt you. Just what would it take? A negotiation, a transaction, a deal. The same way she viewed everything else. I felt an unexpected sadness, because in that moment, I finally understood something. Lauren still didn't get it. Not really. She understood consequences. She understood public perception. She understood opportunity. But she still didn't understand respect. I stood slowly. The conversation was over. Lauren noticed immediately. So that's it? I nodded. That's it. Her frustration exploded. You're unbelievable. I remained calm. No. She stood too. I'm trying to fix this. I looked at her carefully. No, Lauren. The words came quietly, but firmly. You're trying to benefit from it. Her face immediately changed. Because she knew I was right, and people hate hearing the truth when they've spent years avoiding it. You think you're better than me now? The question sounded almost desperate. I shook my head. No. Then what? I took a deep breath. The answer came surprisingly easily. I finally stopped believing I was less. The silence afterward felt enormous. Lauren stared at me. For the first time since I'd known her, she seemed completely unable to respond. No argument, no clever remark, no criticism, nothing. Because the conversation had never been about cooking, never been about food, never even been about respect alone. It had always been about value. For years, Lauren acted as if my value depended on what I could provide. Meals, help, time, labor. Now she was discovering something uncomfortable. My value existed whether I served her or not. Eventually, she grabbed her purse. Her movements were sharp, angry, defeated. Before leaving, she paused at the door, then asked one final question. A question that sounded smaller than all the others. "Do you hate me?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and surprisingly, the answer was easy. No. She seemed genuinely shocked. "Then why are you doing this?" I smiled sadly. "I'm not doing anything to you." The words settled heavily between us. I'm finally doing something for myself. For several seconds, Lauren simply stood there. Then she left. No slammed door, no dramatic exit, just silence. After she was gone, I stood in the kitchen for a long time, thinking, not about Lauren, about myself. Because for the first time in years, I realized I no longer needed her approval, or her understanding, or even her apology. I had spent so long waiting for someone else to validate my worth. Now I understood something much more important. I could do it myself. And the timing couldn't have been better. Because in less than a week, the Sunday table would officially open its doors. The entire town would be watching. Ryan would be there. The grandchildren would be there. Samuel and Olivia would be there. And whether Lauren attended or not, one thing was certain. The opening night would change everything. Not because it would prove anything to Lauren, but because it would finally prove something to me. The opening night of the Sunday table arrived on a crisp Friday evening in early autumn. I stood outside the restaurant 30 minutes before the doors opened, staring at the sign above the entrance. For a moment, I couldn't move. The building wasn't Knight's Kitchen. The sign didn't carry my family's name. The walls were different. The neighborhood was different. Yet somehow standing there felt like coming home. Not to a place, to myself. Samuel walked out of the front door carrying a clipboard. The moment he saw me, he smiled. "You're early." I laughed softly. "I haven't slept much." "Good." I rolled my eyes. "Why is everything good with you?" He grinned. "Because tonight matters." I looked at the restaurant. People were already gathering outside. Families, couples, friends, some familiar faces, some strangers. The excitement in the air felt almost electric. And suddenly, I felt nervous, not because I feared failure, because success felt unfamiliar. For years I had hidden. For years I had convinced myself that chapter of my life was over. Now it was beginning again. Samuel seemed to sense what I was thinking. "You earned this." I shook my head. "No." My voice caught slightly. "I survived long enough to find it." His smile softened. "That too." A little before opening, Olivia came rushing toward us. She looked exactly as she always did. Busy, excited, running on pure determination. "We have a full house." Samuel laughed. "I know." "No, I mean completely full." She pointed inside. "We've already got a waiting list." For a moment, I simply stared at her. A waiting list. On opening night, the news felt surreal. Then Olivia hugged me unexpectedly. "You did this." I hugged her back. "We all did." She shook her head. "No." Her eyes shone. "People came because of the food." Emotion tightened in my throat. Before I could respond, the doors opened. And suddenly, everything began. The first hour passed in a blur. Customers filled every table. Laughter echoed through the dining room. Servers moved quickly. The kitchen worked efficiently. The atmosphere felt warm, alive, exactly what Samuel had hoped for. Several people recognized me. Some remembered Night's kitchen. Others had only heard stories. Many stopped to shake my hand. A few shared memories. One elderly couple told me they had celebrated their engagement at my old restaurant 40 years earlier. Another woman showed me a faded photograph from a family gathering. A young man told me his grandmother still talked about my peach cobbler. Each conversation felt like receiving a small piece of my life back. Not because I needed praise, because I had spent years believing those memories were gone. Apparently, they never were. Around 7 o'clock, I saw Ryan. He entered quietly, not alone. Emma and Benjamin were with him. The moment the children spotted me, they ran across the room. "Grandma!" Benjamin nearly knocked me over. I laughed and hugged both of them. For a few moments, nothing else mattered. Then I looked up at Ryan. He seemed nervous, almost uncertain. I walked over and hugged him. The tension immediately left his shoulders. "I'm glad you're here." His eyes became slightly red. I wouldn't miss this. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Emma grabbed my hand. "Mom didn't come." The words slipped out before Ryan could stop her. I glanced at him. He looked uncomfortable. Then he sighed. "She said she wasn't feeling well." Maybe that was true. Maybe it wasn't. At that point, it didn't matter. I simply nodded and moved on. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't interested in chasing Lauren's approval. The evening continued. More customers arrived, more stories were shared, more memories resurfaced. Then something unexpected happened. Around 8:30, Samuel climbed onto a small platform near the dining room. He tapped a microphone. The room gradually became quiet. Immediately, I felt suspicious. I knew that look. Samuel was planning something. Sure enough, he smiled. "Thank you all for being here tonight." Applause followed. Then he continued. "This restaurant exists because many people worked hard." More applause. "But there is one person I need to recognize." I immediately shook my head. Samuel ignored me. Of course he did. He pointed directly at me. The entire room turned. My face became warm instantly. Many years ago, this community fell in love with a restaurant called Night's Kitchen. People began nodding, smiling, remembering. Samuel continued. "The recipes were wonderful." Pause. "The food was memorable." Pause. "But what people truly remember is how they felt." His eyes found mine. And that came from Erica Knight. The applause started slowly, then grew and grew and grew, until the entire restaurant was standing for me. I felt tears fill my eyes, not because of the recognition, because for so many years I had believed I was invisible. Now I was surrounded by proof that I had never been invisible at all. I had simply listened to the wrong voices. The applause finally ended. People returned to their meals. Conversations resumed. But something inside me had changed permanently. A weight I had carried for years seemed to disappear. Later that evening, after most customers had left, Ryan found me standing near the kitchen. For several moments, he simply looked at me. Then he said something that made me cry. "I'm proud of you." 3 simple words. Yet somehow they meant everything. Because they weren't about food, or favors, or family obligations. They were about me. I hugged him tightly. When we finally stepped apart, Ryan smiled. A real smile. One I hadn't seen in a long time. Then he said, "I'm still learning." I nodded. "So am I." And that was the truth. We were both learning. learning how to communicate, learning how to respect boundaries, learning how to love without taking each other for granted. The restaurant finally closed near midnight. After everyone left, I stood alone in the dining room. The chairs were being stacked. Lights dimmed. The excitement of the evening slowly faded. Yet I felt peaceful, deeply peaceful. I thought about the woman I had been at the beginning of this story. The woman who measured her value through sacrifice. The woman who allowed disrespect because she feared conflict. The woman who believed love required endless giving. I wasn't that woman anymore. Not because I became stronger, because I finally remembered my worth. Lauren once said the only thing I was good at was feeding people. For years, those words hurt. Now I understood how wrong they were. I wasn't valuable because I cooked meals. I cooked meals because I was valuable. And there is a difference, a very important difference. Most importantly, I learned that love without respect eventually becomes resentment. But love with boundaries becomes something healthier, something sustainable, something real. I never cooked another meal for Lauren, not because I hated her, not because I wanted revenge, because some doors close for a reason, and some lessons can only be learned when people experience the consequences of their own choices. As for me, I finally stopped feeding someone who never appreciated the meal, and in doing so, I discovered how to nourish myself. Life has a way of teaching us lessons we never expected to learn. For many years, I believed being a good mother meant always saying yes. I believed love meant sacrifice, patience, and putting everyone else's needs before my own. While there is beauty in generosity, there is also danger when generosity becomes permission for others to take us for granted. One of the hardest lessons I learned is that kindness without boundaries can slowly become self-neglect. The people who love us should appreciate us, not merely consume what we provide. Whether it's our time, our energy, our support, or our care, those gifts deserve respect. If someone only values you when you're useful, they don't truly value you. Another lesson is that silence doesn't always create peace. Sometimes silence allows hurt to grow. Sometimes speaking up is the most loving thing we can do for ourselves and for the people around us. I also learned that it is never too late to rediscover yourself. No matter your age, no matter how long you've been overlooked, no matter how many people have underestimated you, your value does not disappear because someone fails to see it. And perhaps the most important lesson of all is this: you do not need revenge to win. You do not need to humiliate someone who hurt you. You simply need to remember who you are. The moment you do, everything changes. If this story touched your heart, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever felt taken for granted by someone you loved? What lesson did life teach you through that experience? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. I read as many comments as I can, and your stories often inspire others who may be going through something similar. And before you go, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is in your part of the world. I always enjoy seeing how far these stories travel. If you enjoy heartfelt family stories with meaningful lessons, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for spending this time with me.